Happy midweek, everyone. Thanks for checking in here on a Wednesday. I'm your host, Shad Dales, and welcome into the Trade to Black podcast. Hope you all are having a great day and a great week. Anthony Varrell coming up in just a moment. We got the David Boies lawsuit to dive into. We have Jason Wild along with Emily Paxhia and Josh Schiller coming on, managing partner of the law firm that presented this whole lawsuit. They're coming up in about 15 minutes. We're going to get some big takeaways on the first day that went down and what the big feedback was and where things stand moving forward from all three of them. As well, lots to talk about. There's some interesting stats that came out about cannabis consumption, everyday users compared to alcohol. It's a stat, actually, I think will grab a lot of people's attention. So lots to get into. But the main point of today's podcast is to get an update on what we're seeing with the David Boies lawsuit. So let's welcome in Mr. Anthony Varrell, TDR co-host. Good to see you. How are things?
It's good. It's good. It's good to start the day with the arguments in the Boies lawsuit. I listened to it end to end, and it's going to be fun to have Josh, Emily, and Jason on. At the hopefully about 15 minutes.
Okay, so you were part of the calls here this morning, listening to it very closely. What was the big, I guess, your take on how things progressed? And I guess, what do you think comes out of this? Is it still too early to tell as far as what the outcome will be moving forward?
Yeah, there's no way to tell the outcome, what will be moving forward. I mean, this was just the opening arguments, or this wasn't the opening arguments. This was oral arguments in regards to the DOJ wanting to dismiss the case, which I don't blame them when, as far as requesting the dismissal with Schedule 3 and with the rescheduling process. But their lawsuit is much more nuanced than what's going on with the rescheduling process. I thought the DEA had some interesting things to say. I mean, they said 280 without a doubt is going away upon rescheduling. So, I mean, that was good. They also did not have an answer for the rationalization of putting cannabis on Schedule 1 to begin with, which is really what I'm excited to get Josh's take on, because from a legal perspective, if you're arguing the constitutionality or the legitimacy of cannabis currently being Schedule 1, yet you have the Department of Justice saying, we agree that there was no rational thought that went into the process of putting cannabis at Schedule 1, then why are we having this conversation to begin with? Why is it taking so long? It's kind of like, guys, let's just get this done and move on. This doesn't have to be a long, arduous process. That is something that should have happened a very long time ago.
Jesus, the plot thickens, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was nice to hear, though. And I mean, there was also a lot of back and forth with how intrastate doesn't lead to interstate. Looking forward to getting clarity around that as well. Because, I mean, just going off of what I consider interstate commerce, and I think that in their arguments, they were deeming interstate commerce as B2B, not B2C. But I mean, we talk about dispensaries in border towns. We talk about people from Ohio jumping the border and going to Michigan to buy product in an adult use market and then going back to Ohio. I consider that interstate commerce. That means that intrastate, being Michigan, and an adult use market is facilitating interstate commerce. I could be very wrong in that assumption. I'm only looking it through the lens that I know how to look through it. But to me, from a common sense perspective, it seems like that makes sense as far as them being able to argue against it. On the B2B or on an actual scaling of it, that could be completely different. And that might be the precedent that they're trying to set, that intrastate commerce in a state does not lead to B2B interstate commerce leaving state lines.
I cannot believe the amount of broken communication that's involved in this industry. Like I don't want to say simple, but I think it's become so much more complicated than what it is. But what do you do at this?
I mean, the federal government could have done the right thing 2 decades ago. And instead of doing the states' rights or state-based framework that we've done with medical to rec and blah, 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 they could have just taken it off the CSA. They could have also just federally legalized it or federally decriminalized it, done everybody a favor, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. You'd have an industry that's probably analogous to the alcohol industry as it sits today. But we like to do things the hard way around here, so here we are.
Wasn't a priority or interest 20 years ago, but once it becomes a legalized...
I still don't think it's a priority or interest now, to be honest. I mean, I think that we're also very lucky that it's an election year. Biden needs wins He found cannabis. Cannabis polls well. Cannabis is socially acceptable.
Yeah.
Biden wants to do something for it. Biden's also getting loud about crypto right now. There's rumblings of an ETH ETF that could potentially be launching. I mean, Biden put out a statement today, and I forget the name of the formal crypto bill, but we're not going to stand in the way of the crypto bill. They're basically going to let the crypto bill pass. I mean, since Trump basically gravitated towards crypto about 2 weeks ago and basically said enough's enough, it's the future of finance, we need to grab onto this innovation, not stifle it. The writing was on the wall that the Biden campaign and the Biden administration were probably going to gravitate towards crypto at some point between now and November to also get those votes, as that's a very strong segment. It's like,
yeah. Oh, would it be nice to have him mention something about cannabis, but that is very highly unlikely. But what that would do for the space, Trump, if he actually said something, and how reactive it would be amongst the Biden administration. We know that's not obviously going to happen, but just a quick heads up. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I don't think Trump's a friend of the industry at all.
Yeah.
I'm getting more and more worried by the day as we get closer to November of what a Trump presidency could do to the cannabis industry if we don't get rescheduling done by the election or by the inauguration. The fact that he said he wants Ken Paxton to be AG, that's Jeff Sessions all over again. I don't know if it would reverse the progress that we've made. I don't think it would be a net negative, but I think it would be I don't think it'd be a net negative for the industry as it stands today, but I think it would be a net negative for the strides that the industry needs to take within the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think you're right.
If Trump is voted president.
I had a brother, died of alcoholism. He's always said, don't smoke, don't drink. And I know there's completely separate from what cannabis is, but if a person that doesn't follow the day-to-day stuff, the industry, he's going to lump that conversation into smoking and alcohol. And I know that he's not going to have final say, but he's not going to be an advocate for the industry as well. But one could only.
We don't need him to be an advocate. We don't need him to be an advocate. We just need him to ignore it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need him to completely just ignore it.
Yeah. Like I said, I got Jason Wild, Emily Paxhia, and Josh Schiller coming up in just a moment to talk about what went down today. They're just actually getting set up on the back end right now, so we'll have it for you. We appreciate everybody for checking in here on a Wednesday. TDR Trade Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dales, on with Anthony Varrell. Before we actually get into conversations with them, real quick, I wanted to bring up some news regarding Planet 13. They actually made news earlier this month where they basically announced that they're expanding into the Florida market with the acquisition of VidaCann. Earlier this month, they announced their latest earnings. Any numbers that you actually want to quick highlight before we get into the David Boies conversation?
Yeah, so I mean, this was actually quite interesting. I mean, VidaCann reported earnings for Q1 of $12.5 million, $5.58 million, reflecting a 45% gross profit margin, operating expenses of around $3 million or 24% of revenue. And I mean, it looks like they picked up an accretive enterprise with VidaCann. They reported $25 million for the last quarter. So this basically boosts their quarterly revenue by 50%. But I mean, one thing that was concerning about the report is when you look at the VidaCann asset, and I mean, if you want to do a forward 12 of $50 million in annualized revenue divided by the, I think, 26 doors they have, that puts them at $1.92 million per door. On an annualized run rate. To put it into perspective, Verano has 75 doors and Verano averages 2.68 million per door, or about 30% more in revenue.
Wow.
And that's going off of last quarter's numbers. That's not going off of Q4's numbers, which their Q1 numbers were down 15% Q over Q in Florida. So that average was even higher for 2023. I've never been to a VidaCann dispensary. I don't know anybody that's ever been to a VidaCann dispensary in Florida. So I'm very curious to see what happens or what the strategy is to turn those around, rebrand them, and start to get those stores humming. But I mean, they've got a good baseline. It could be a very good asset to add to the Planet 13 portfolio. Right now, from a strength standpoint, I would be willing to bet they are grossly underperforming their peers on a store-by-store basis in the Florida market.
What's the average door number for True Leaf? Do you know?
The only reason I used Verano is because they're gracious enough to actually break out their revenue on a state-by-state basis. So I could take their revenue from last quarter, which I think was $50 million in the Florida market, divided by the door count, and I just did a forward 12 run rate. It's all back in the napkin math, but I mean, Verano's beating them by 30% on a door-to-door basis.
What's the geography, location-wise, of these locations? Do you know much about where they're located?
Like I said, I've never been there. I think they're mostly in Central Florida in the Panhandle. There might be one or two in South Florida. If there are, I haven't seen them in Dade, Broward, or Palm Beach County. But I mean, I think the branding will be different with a Planet 13 banner flying there versus the Vitacan banner. But like I said, I've never been there. I don't know anybody that's been there. I've never even been on their website to see their offerings. They don't come to mind when I think about purchasing cannabis in the state of Florida. Well, but I mean, I'm definitely going to be watching on a go-forward basis, especially if they're going to be separately reporting the numbers. And they also referred to Vitacan as a subsidiary of Planet 13, which I thought was interesting. But if they're going to report it broken out, we'll be able to figure it out on a door-by-door basis and see how they grow within the market.
Interesting. Just looking on the back end right now, I see the boardroom, but nobody is in there just quite yet. So please stand by. Wednesday afternoon, Anthony Varrell, Shad Dales, TDR, Trade Black podcast. Smash that like button. We're going to be kicking off just some questions regarding with the team in just a minute. If you guys want, just all reaching out there, leave some comments below. Let us know if there's any questions that you want us to ask based on the outcome and some of the feedback of the opening hearings here today in the David Boies lawsuit. So now is the time to leave comments below, and we will communicate those as soon as they jump on with us. As usual, smash that like button and make sure to share this video once completed to your network. We greatly appreciate it. Into the wire here on a Wednesday afternoon, we go to our third topic. And this is an interesting one I want to bring up. It's a staggering stat that I think will grab the attention of cannabis followers and consumers involving a recent national survey that shows more daily cannabis consumers versus daily drinkers. You brought this to my attention, Anthony. Did this surprise you?
No, not really, as people do use cannabis more therapeutically. Alcohol, I guess, is seen more of a social product, we'll call it. I mean, I use cannabis every day. I wouldn't in my wildest dreams use alcohol every day. Even when I was younger, I mean, I might drink once a week.
Yeah.
I really don't like it. I'm sure there's a lot of people that do.
So is that a good thing or a bad thing? Is that a good or bad thing of the industry if you're using cannabis every day?
I mean, it's a great thing for the businesses. I don't know if it's a great thing for people. I think that there needs to be more research and there needs to be more data on the matter. I mean, I'm still a high functioning human being and I use cannabis once a day, but I use it to chill out at night and go to sleep. I feel like that's what most people do. I mean, a lot of other people also use it instead of prescription medication for certain things. But what I did find that was weird about the AP article is it was very fragmented and it just randomly mentioned Florida adult use. And then the footer was psychosis, a quote from some doctor. And it was just more, it was more bizarre than it was, I guess, factual, just in nature of the article. But yeah, it was strange. It wasn't positive. It wasn't negative. But it's a positive fact for the industry because, I mean, when you look at the growth rate of the industry overall, and then when you also talk about just businesses and their growth rates, I mean, if daily cannabis use is outpacing daily alcohol use, that bodes well for the businesses that we're investing in.
All right, for all you canopy growth lovers out there, we got the earnings report. Is it a week from tomorrow on May the 30th?
30th,
Yeah. David Klein, CEO, will be joining us on the 30th that day. So mark it in your calendar. Canopy Growth, David Klein, CEO, talk about their latest earnings. They will be joining Anthony and I next week. Don't know if that'll be a live stream or a pre-record yet because that is the next Thursday, but we will let you know either way. If it is a pre-record, we'll make sure that we have that up and posted by Thursday afternoon or first thing Friday morning. But either way, anticipate an interview with Mr. David Klein by next week. I see some people rolling in now. I see Mr. Wild. And
it looks like Mr. Wild.
Yeah. Emily as well. She's had a busy couple of days. Was in Hawaii last week and now flying all the way to Massachusetts. But
Hawaii's not as far as you'd think from San Francisco. I think it's only like a 6-hour flight.
5-6 hour flight.
Yeah.
Also, if you guys haven't got a chance, I had a fascinating interview yesterday with psychedelic advocate Zappy Zaplin talking about just the MAPS is Lycos Therapeutics and their chances of getting an FDA approval by August 11th. If you guys haven't had a chance to check out on our YouTube channel, check out that video and some major upside potential for this industry. Okay, I see all three now sitting down. Let's bring them in. I see Emily now waving, so let's bring them in.
Cool.
Can they see? All right.
Hi. We can see
what's going on. All right, I need all
guys.
I need all three of you to get nice and close with each other. How's that sound? How's it going? I guess Josh, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Yeah. Busy day for all three of you. So Jason, I'll begin with you. Yep. All of our viewers are highly anticipating what you learned and what's the big takeaway at the opening hearing. So what was the big takeaway if you were to communicate to our audience?
I think that probably the better person to give the story takeaway, because to be honest, I mean, I thought it sounded great, but I'm clearly a layman. And then when we all got together in the hallway afterwards, I know that our legal team was pretty excited and they had a bunch of takeaways. I wouldn't mind throwing it to Josh to have him give you that as opposed to me.
Yeah, before we get started, just for audience knows, it's Josh Schiller, managing partner of the actual law firm.
I am just a partner. I'm not a managing
partner. Okay, I'll make that correction. But regardless, it's important, obviously, to let our audience know who you are and obviously the big, help you're obviously providing of the team that's in place today. So I'll hand it over to you. What's the big takeaway I think that you can communicate to all of us?
So we've been working on a case theoretically for 6 years.
Yep.
But for the last 2 years, we've been working with the people you see on either side of me and a group of other people supporting a case to get rid of federal criminalization of marijuana, which will be far more significant than the efforts that we appreciate and admire that the Biden administration is doing to reclassify cannabis, something that the judge asked many questions on about today. And so we filed this case last October in the Western District of Massachusetts with a group of plaintiffs who represented all levels of the cannabis industry, a group of farmers, a delivery service, and an MSO, just to show the court that the different types of people who represent what I call the American story about the commerce that's involved intrastate, legally, within the confines of the law, representing an investment in communities, in particular in Western Massachusetts, where communities are struggling with business and employment. And, we brought that to the courthouse today. We had 12 people in the courtroom representing our clients of different color. We had a Black man, we had several women, a couple of white men. We had a diverse group there to present to him why the discriminatory effects of federal criminalization need to go away permanently, not temporarily, and not in some kind of form that translates to regulation by the FDA.
Yeah. Go ahead, Anthony.
So, I mean, I listened to the comments wire to wire this morning. The DOJ didn't really say anything that I thought was too, I would say, incendiary or kind of like got you in their arguments. Was there anything that you guys found surprising that the DOJ had said in their arguments?
Not at all. I thought the DOJ lawyer did a very good job in articulating their position, which was to defend the law, defend the prior Supreme Court decision, and to argue why reclassification doesn't completely undermine their position, legally speaking, as we argue in our papers. But today was just a motion to dismiss. It's the tip of the iceberg in a federal case. And so the court is supposed to construe our arguments in the facts we allege in our favor, and not to determine anything against us. And so the court understood that. Now, this is the third time in my career where I've had a case that's challenging a prior precedent of the Supreme Court in terms of saying why a case that's based on similar facts and plaintiffs who are positioned in a similar position to people that were decided against by the Supreme Court should have a different outcome. That's a great challenge. And my partner and managing partner of Boies Schiller and chairman of Boies Schiller and founder of Boies Schiller, David Boies, made what I would consider to be a Supreme Court level argument today in front of a judge who asked a lot of very difficult questions to both sides. And I was very impressed.
What's next? I mean, I'm assuming the judge makes a decision to continue or dismiss.
So the judge the judge can dismiss our case. Most judges would be inclined to do so in the light of the Supreme Court decision. But he took time to study our position. He took time to ask the right questions and actually ask some questions that went beyond what I considered usual. I mean, he really had studied, and that's great. And regardless of what his decision is, we expect he'll make a very thoughtful one, and that we couldn't ask for anything more than that. What we've asked him to do is to defer any decision substantively on the merits argument of whether the Gonzalez case still controls until summary judgment. So if he agrees with us, in 2 to 3 months, we may get a decision allowing us to go to summary judgment. We could do that this year or early next year, and then we would take that record up to the appellate court. If we don't, we will take the record we've created to the appellate court. Either way, this case is going to the appellate court next.
What do you think is the ultimate goal in this lawsuit, if you had to look at this from a 40,000-foot view?
To get rid permanently of federal oversight based on criminalization of marijuana.
I think the big thing. Go ahead.
Were you expecting the DOJ to admit that there was really not a rational process to originally schedule cannabis? Schedule 1?
I sure hope an interesting that we get a decision that says it. Now, I don't think they admitted to that. They would strongly disagree with you. That is my thesis of the case. What they said was that we're curtailing it. And then in their papers, they said we're preventing tourism. I think that argument is specious.
Wow.
Now, and I don't think that's a lawful argument either, because people have a right to travel, a constitutional right to travel. That's part of the liberty, the fundamental rights under the Constitution. But people don't have a right to take it over state lines, and we're not asking for that right. We're not asking for that right. We're asking for the discriminatory effects of federal criminalization to go away.
100%. I think the biggest thing I find is that, when I was in Washington with Anthony last month, there's just so many people are uninformed about where we are today within this industry. But conversations like this, I think, help push the narrative forward. Do you sense a lot of that with regards to like what you're seeing, Josh? Is that it's just about awareness and bringing this, a black man, a white man, a female, like all this diversification and where we are in today's day and age with the actual industry, that there's a lot of people unaware of this?
These are entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And there's no reason these entrepreneurs should be treated differently than other small business owners trying to live the American dream. That's the case we're trying to present. Now, it's also true that this is a great business. This is a business that's supported by 25 states. We only have 50 last I checked. I mean, and that's in a short period of time if you think about how things evolve. I mean, it's been, 14 years since Colorado legalized it?
I know.
I mean, it's not that long. And we now have 25 states. We have 38 states, which last I checked was a super majority. If they were in charge of anything, they have full control of the board, right?
Yeah.
So, but this is a federalism issue.
Yeah.
Our federal government has limited authority to make these decisions, and we're trying to introduce facts in our complaint that we think we can support. And there was a lot of questioning that we got today that we expected about diversion. And we'd like to have a chance to show why that's not a substantial impact. And in fact, the lawful operation of our businesses is having more to do with curtailing or preventing the illegal side of the business than anything else.
Yeah.
And people want to go to a safe, operated, legitimate, state-run business and buy a safe product, get advice. I mean, they all look like Apple stores when you go in them these days.
Don't they?
And people love it. They like it. They prefer it to alcohol. Many people do. And it should be regulated by the states and left free of the discriminatory treatment that the federal oversight brings.
So is that, go ahead, Emily.
Yeah, no, I think your point is an interesting one about, does it changing perspectives? I mean, so as you guys know, and you have done it too, sometimes when you go to the Capitol, you go around Congress, like people still kind of make a little bit of jokes about the industry. Like it has that kind of flavor to it at times. And then, I mean, Senator Daines is not, he's a very professional person about it. And there are people who are great stakeholders for us there, but sometimes you don't feel you're taken as seriously. I mean, today, there was none of that. We had a judge who came, from my layman's point of view, incredibly prepared and with really thoughtful questions. And I thought even the DOJ came prepared. and brought their own points. And this is what we want. Like iron sharpens iron. Let's work this through the process. And I think that was a level of professionalism around this that I was just so excited to see.
Emily, what question do you think from the judge stood out to you the most that, maybe in some ways impressed you, that they came fully prepared, and at least you think someone's actually listening to like where this industry is pivoting and growing?
Yeah, there were a lot of questions I thought that were really interesting. I think the way that we got to discuss what it means to have a credible threat and how David Boies was able to create a lot of context around what that means for an industry trying to operate intrastate under the reach of the CSA and the implications of that, and sitting with the named plaintiffs that range in size and type of businesses. I mean, we talked about it over lunch, just hearing over and over again how this has impacted their businesses. Also, the fundamental right to cannabis. There was a really interesting question the judge asked, and I could not believe the way that David Boies created this very interesting arc around it of the Dobbs case, of the outcome of the overturning of Roe v. Wade, and what that means in terms of, however people feel about that. It's a very, very different case. But for me, those were really interesting points of discussion around a fundamental right to something and credible threat. I thought those were really salient.
Yeah, I actually thought that the DOJ arguments are going to be a little bit more incendiary.
Me too.
As with more like a shock perspective. The more that it went on and the more I listened to it, I was like, all right, well, this is pretty, I don't want to say benign, but it was pretty pretty docile. I mean, when you were talking, I know a lot of it was focused on the intrastate versus interstate argument. Is that based on the thesis of intrastate commerce will extinguish interstate commerce as it relates to the illicit market? Is that what that argument was kind of built around?
So,
yeah, that is.
So and David said it better than I can say it, but the federal government has no authority under the Constitution to regulate intrastate commerce.
Okay.
So businesses that are wholly operating within a state legally are free from federal oversight.
Mm-hmm.
And that's with limited exception, where a business that operates intrastate has an impact. And the test is it has to have a substantial impact. But then the federal government is held to a standard that it must have a legitimate interest. And then the test is whether it's necessary to that interest,
mm-hmm.
and whether the impact of that law on the local business, in other words, the interstate commerce, is proper. And so there are very few cases on this, going back to a case called Wickard from the 1940s involving controlling the price of weed. And that's what the 2005 medical marijuana case in California, Gonzalez, which was the subject of conversation today, was based upon. And that somehow the federal government is able to eradicate the medical marijuana industry, that will eradicate the black market for marijuana throughout the country. Now, we all know as a fact that just hasn't happened.
No, it hasn't.
No.
Not at all. Jason, what was your big takeaway today?
Similar to what Emily said, that the judge seemed to take this case very seriously. He did a lot of homework. He asked a lot of questions that afterwards the team at Boies Schiller were surprised and impressed that he asked. And it's like the opposite of running into somebody in Congress and talking about, him or her making some stupid joke about whether, the bill is up in smoke or, some stupid weed reference. I mean, there were no jokes. It was some pretty serious stuff. And it comes back to what I originally thought, or the thesis was in my mind, is that in terms of lobbying, there's so much money that needs to be spent in order to have a lot of effectiveness relative to all these other companies and industries that can spend a whole lot more in terms of what they're willing to spend. But with this case, as long as we were able to go out and get what I think is the best constitutional law firm in the United States, not that it's cheap, but it's partially subsidized by Boies Schiller because it's an important issue to them, and there's nobody competing. I mean, obviously the government has huge resources, right?
Yes.
But I mean, we had a whole table of attorneys there, and there was just one guy from the DOJ.
So what's that say? What do you think that says?
That was completely normal. I thought the lawyer was brilliant.
He was
I
great.
thought
He was very good. He was very good.
He was very
Yeah.
eloquent. He was very intelligent, and I frankly wouldn't want anything else on the other side. This is an important argument. I want the judge to have the best of both sides, and I think he saw it today. And it was wonderful. It was a wonderful debate, wonderful dialogue, and
Really
great
was.
questions were asked on both sides of the issue.
Yeah.
And he was really nice to all of us too, by the way.
Yeah, like we were taking a picture in front of the thing, and he was like, needed to like walk through us. He's like, "I'll wait." Very,
It's
very
very
friendly,
clear
very
that
nice.
the war on drugs is over.
Yeah.
And it ended when we
That's
were
a
all
bold
in
statement.
college.
That's a
So-
bold
so
statement.
What are we
Yeah.
doing? What are we doing?
Yeah.
That's the question that we're raising.
If this progresses, do you foresee them ever throwing a wrench in kind of arguing the bifurcation of medical and rec and how that applies to any of these laws? That's why I brought it up. It was in my notes. That he brought the judge brought that up, which I thought was the most interesting part.
Yeah.
And then I mean the DOJ didn't really respond to it in kind. I mean, I was more so interested to see if you think that's going to come back in in the future at all as it relates to the case.
No, I mean,
Well, we have pled our case in a way
Yep.
that would satisfy the needs of all businesses in all 38 states. We know that the states have taken that issue very seriously, with 25 of them deciding that adult use is appropriate. Some of them have decided, let's be a laboratory a little bit further. That's what federalism is all about. And so I think it's up to the states, and it's a laboratory issue. And I think the states have shown that they can deal with this issue, and that's what our lawsuit hopes to show.
Right.
Now, especially as they grow and they create more resources around it. But the real area of debate, which I had not anticipated, which was interesting to me, was the focus on whether access to medical marijuana is a fundamental right. And I think this judge may consider that now. And I say that only because I don't think an appellate court has considered it yet, because in the cases we presented to the court, both Gonzalez and then when it went back to the Ninth Circuit, that issue was considered, but the Ninth Circuit said, right now, it's not an issue we can decide, but it may change in the future, which really opens the door and invites a judge in a district court to think about it, and with the right amount of evidence presented. And so if we have the ability to go past the motion to dismiss and to take the case to summary judgment, that's an issue we'll focus on.
Okay.
We'll present evidence on. And the government will try to suggest why reclassification may help it, control marijuana and offer a legitimate policy. Now, it will still have the impact of federal criminalization even within the classification of Schedule 3.
Right.
I do think it was interesting. We didn't talk about this. I thought that the attorney for the DOJ confirmed that if it was rescheduled, that the tax would not apply. Not that we haven't all assumed that, but
That's unequivocally true. And so our
Yeah.
full expectation is that our clients and the industry will be relieved in a very significant way this year.
Yeah.
That's our
that was my first note. As soon as he said that, I was like, okay, they just said something actually concrete that matters, that we haven't heard from the DOJ. So that was refreshing to see regarding 280.
Yeah. Well, we said it at your house about a year and a half ago, Jason, incremental steps. And these are incremental steps towards the maturity of this industry. Josh, early to tell, but would you classify today as a positive one in the right direction?
We couldn't have asked for anything more. We had our day in court. We had almost 2 hours to argue. We had a very tough judge taking the issue extremely seriously.
That's great. That's all you can ask for.
We could ask for. It's
So
the
this is a really
democratic
good
process working itself out.
This is a really good question from Anthony Caniglio. Do you expect state AGs to submit letters of support to the case at any point?
We have support from state AGs and from governors.
Okay.
And we expect the state AGs to be amicus briefs if we get to summary judgment.
Okay.
We think it's a really important issue.
It's great.
Yeah.
Another great question. Any sightings of Richard Nixon in the courtroom today?
No, but there was some suspicion that Jimmy Hoffa might have been somewhere.
Listen, I really appreciate you guys checking in here today. Jason, Emily, thanks for obviously bringing Josh on. Josh, wealth of knowledge. But
it's a pleasure. Nice to meet you both.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Let's please keep in touch. We'd love to have you back on again just to see how this progresses. But glad this was classified as a step in the right direction today. And most importantly, on behalf of the entire industry, keep working hard, and we're cheering for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
I love the way he said this. The war on drugs is over. Like
it is. I mean, the
way he said
it is.
I love that statement, but the way he said it sounds so convincing, and it's just like, yeah, you're right. It's 2024. It's time to get going and move on. I do like the idea that this judge was fully prepared and was ready to ask some pinpointed questions, because let's face it, people like Jason, Emily, that have been speaking to people like obviously Josh and the legal team for a number of years. They've been waiting for this day for how many years in the making, just to say, look, all we want is just someone to do their homework, to come and present, some pinpointed questions for us, because we're more unprepared, knowing how much people are just uninformed when it comes to the growth and maturity of this industry. So how would you categorize and classify today?
It's net positive. It was a net positive for the entire industry. It was good to listen to. It was good to see some things said out loud. And it was just another step in the right direction. I mean, we know we've been hitting the government on all angles with this lawsuit, with rescheduling, with SAFE. Cannabis is working its way through all branches of government right now. And I mean, that is a huge net positive.
Absolutely. Guap, good to see you, my friend. The open, transparent, friendly dialogue between judge and legal counsel was a pleasure to listen to. Yes. Got something caught in my throat. All right. That was great for today. I think it'll wrap things up. Don't forget, we got Mark Yusko, CEO of Morgan Creek Digital, on tomorrow morning. We're posting that video tomorrow afternoon to talk about Ethereum and the chances of an ETF that could be coming to fruition, and how this crypto industry continues to roar here in 2024. So if you haven't seen previous podcasts that Anthony and I have spoken to Mark Yusko, this is one of the smartest business people you will come across, and a wealth of knowledge, not just about crypto, but pure economics in general. So if you get a chance, log on tomorrow at 4:00, and then back again on Friday morning at 11 a.m. before the long weekend with Dan from the Chart Guys to talk about the recent couple of weeks, some volatility. Yes, we've seen some stocks retract, but what we can anticipate, knowing that not a lot of big news on the near-term horizon, but how you should prepare yourself moving forward. That's coming up on Friday morning. As usual, please leave comments below. Let us know feedback, any questions that you want to ask Jason and Emily based on today's David Boies lawsuit and the opening hearings. Feel free to drop some comments below, and make sure to log on to thedalesreport.com and subscribe to our baked-in newsletter for bonus coverage. Anthony, good to see you, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and I'll see you back here Friday morning.
Everybody on Friday.
Take care.
Cut it.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching our latest podcast. Lots of momentum building. You guys getting all excited? Leave comments below. Again, we want to take this viral. Smash that like button and make sure to click on that bell for all notifications as we start to bring on bigger and bigger guests. Don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, the Baked In newsletter, by logging on to thedalesreport.com. And we want to take this viral, as I said, and make this community grow. So make sure to subscribe on that channel, because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everyone, for watching.